Good morning to you, wherever you may be in the world today. Clements here from Santa Monica, California, United States of America. March 18, 2021. It's been a series of talks since the military coup in Myanmar happened on February 1st. Instigated by Hlaing, who jailed my dear friend, Aung San Suu Kyi, and the president, U Win Myint, and my beloved friend, U Win Tain, and the 54 million people that I consider to be brothers and sisters and family in the country of Burma. And here we are, 6 weeks and a half later, and the revolution goes on. And today, I'm not pressed for words, but it's a new edge to talk about the power of civil disobedience, what we've seen for 6 weeks in Burma, the complete activation of human conscience, if you will, as weapon of choice over the blunt force of armaments, bullets, and guns and murder. This is the distinguishing feature for me over the decades of my involvement since the uprising in '88 that has distinguished Burma's revolution of the spirit, their non-violent struggle for freedom, decency, rule of law, justice, and democracy, the right to breathe without fear of persecution and violation, and today without assassination. A striking, radical expression of what Aung San Suu Kyi calls grace under pressure, grace renewed repeatedly under harsh, unremitting pressure. What we're seeing today in Burma, in Myanmar, is a remarkable act of moral, ethical courage and the right to determination to dream. That's the key issue for me here, the dream, creatively dream of a future for your family, your children, to live in the sanctity of education, peace, the right to livelihood, the beauty of practicing one's own religion, the choice in how you wish to bow and pray to your God, to your Allah, to your Jesus, to your Buddha, to your matrix, whatever it is that you want to call the divinity that we are born into. The holiness of existence is at war right now with a maniacal terrorist group. And one side is using the power of God and Jesus and Buddha and Allah and atheism and consciousness and conscience and the universality of human rights to confront the evil of the weapon, motivated by dictatorship. Today, tragically, a terrorist group known by the acronym MAH-SAC, Ming Online, State Administration Council, SAC, MAH-SAC, the world's latest designation. It should be known equally as Boko Haram in Nigeria, Pol Pot's Khmer Rouge, the horror of the Taliban in Afghanistan. Ming Online is none other than South Asia's Saddam Hussein, and he must be stopped. Here we have the civil disobedience movement that is quickly moving, evolving into, by choices on the ground and around Myanmar by the leaders, to armed resistance. An open declaration of revolution to unify the armed ethnic groups who've been besieged for decades by Ming Online and Tan Shui and Ne Win's terrorist organization. They have had enough. They're unifying. under the umbrella of a federal group of freedom fighters for the liberation of Burma from terrorist organization MAH-SAC. That's a radical move, and today I'd like to speak extemporaneously about this movement from civil disobedience to armed revolution, to armed resistance, to guerrilla war tactics that Nelson Mandela, of course, took decades of nonviolent activism in his country of South Africa and said, enough. We will deal with the white man's gun with selected acts of self-defense to interrupt the apparatus of the white man's convenience to kill and to oppress the black woman and the black man. The right to self-defense. Let me say right off the bat, I have studied this issue up close. I have discussed it exhaustively with Aung San Suu Kyi in our books, The Voice of Hope and Burma's Voices of Freedom. The role of nonviolence versus that of armed resistance. Her teachers, her mentors, my friends, my mentors, my teachers. U Tinu, the former general under the dictator Ne Win. U Chi Mung, the former colonel under the dictator Ne Win. Both left the military terrorist group and formed the National League for Democracy along with other people, U Win Tin. And today here we have 33 years later, a darkness that has descended upon the beloved Myanmar. And these people are either imprisoned or they passed on. And now we see this revolution taking on what looks to be an armed struggle. I'm not advocating this. I am basically speaking extemporaneously about the edge as I feel it today, trying to identify with the people of Myanmar as my brothers and sisters and my family, my daughter, my mother, all the various ways in which we empathize with each other without hesitation to care for someone so intimately as close as my wife, my husband, my daughter. You're not a foreign country 10,000 miles from America. You're a democratic family. And so armed resistance, U Chi Mung once told me, Alan, when you ask me about nonviolence or armed resistance, listen, someone is here terrorizing you. They want to take your home, they want to take your money, they want to rape your wife, they want to behead your daughter, okay? He's exaggerating the circumstances, but not really. He says, you want me to send active metta to them? May you be happy, may you be free of suffering while you're being beheaded and your daughter's being raped? No. It's not an indelible spiritual principle, nonviolence. Yes, it's the optimum choice. But when we're pressed to the edge of persecution, self-defense, Alan, is an essential spiritual attribute of the Dhamma. Look at King Ashoka, he would tell me. The most beloved king all throughout Buddhist history, responsible for sending his children around the South Asian Indian continent, establishing Dhamma, the sanctity of dana, generosity, the power of sila, ethical conscience, and the beauty of bhavana, mind training, to understand the role of right mindfulness, right effort, right concentration, the elevation of this incredible concept called nibbana, the extinction of evil. Yet King Ashoka did not move away from his responsibility as a leader. Human life has shown us the convulsions of greed, anger, and delusion are in the ocean of shared space. They arise based on conditions that aren't often clear. A king, a leader, must act responsibly on behalf of the people that he and she support and represent. I was thinking, are there parallels to this kind of thinking in the Buddhist text? And I was thinking of one that people are very fond of quoting, including myself, of the simile of the arrow, where it's said that a human was shot by an arrow, and the Buddha uses this simile as an example. And I've come to show you how to remove this arrow from your chest. And you ask me, as you're there dying on the ground, no, don't remove the arrow yet. I want to know who shot it and why. Where did the shaft come from? Where did the feathers come from? Where did they refine the tip? Meanwhile, in that speculative consideration, in this simile, you die. And so the point is, remove the arrow of dukkha, okay? Don't worry about the context of where the arrow came from. That's one interpretation. Imagine in that discourse, all of a sudden, next to that man or woman who's been shot by the arrow, there's another man or woman who's now been shot by the arrow, who's falling down to the left of this man called the Buddha, trying to talk to this person who's dying about not worrying about where the arrow came from, and another arrow, and another man, another woman, and all of a sudden we're on the streets of Yangon or Mandalay or Sagaing or Monhua, and there's more and more boys and girls being shot by arrows called bullets. And we're there trying to understand, how can we remove the bullet from your chest? And they're shooting the ambulances, they're shooting the doctors in the ambulances. And how does this simile apply to modern time context? And all of a sudden, for me, where I go in this, my humble understanding of Dhamma, is that you go, oh yes, there is an importance here to remove the bullet from the chest of the person who's been assassinated. But equally, there has to be this panoramic understanding. Where in the hell are these bullets coming from? We've got to turn our attention simultaneously to stop the madness of the murderer. This dual function of modern day Dhamma, we take care of the individual, at the same time we take care of the context. We're all in the fabric of democracy. Freedom is not an island, as it's been said. Your freedom and my freedom are inseparable. And so here today, from the civil disobedience movement to active Dhamma-oriented, religious-based, armed resistance. Call it what you want. Guerrilla tactics, using the gun to oppose the gun, to stopping the madness, to overcome terrorism and dictatorship and to establish freedom. Your leaders in country have told me, you can read it for their words in the book, The Voice of Hope, in the 4 volumes of Burma's Voices of Freedom. Armed resistance is necessary at a certain stage of persecution. We all know that. Look in history. Just take a moment here. I'm in no hurry to get through this. Look at the resistance movement during the Third Reich by the Jewish people, primarily in areas likened to ghettos, or the Warsaw Ghetto, which is the most prominent. But I think there were like 90 prominent ghettos throughout the occupied Nazi area. And they each had armed resistance units within those ghettos. Now, in this simile, Burma is not a ghetto, it's a country, but the ghetto here is a confined area prescribed by a maniacal evil mind, a Hitler or a Ming Online, who is now a Saddam Hussein, a Pol Pot. They have made Burma a ghetto. You can't escape easily. You can't live there peacefully. You're under terror. You're under assassination. We've seen the videos. We've seen the still images. You see videos of soldiers and police dancing in celebration in the evening, drinking their liquor and their wine and smoking their cigarettes. And I'm thinking, they more easily kill their own people than smoke a cigarette. That is how natural their murder inclination is. Can you reason with them? Can you talk to them about the power of metta, loving kindness, or dhamma, or kamma? No. They need to see the power of the weapon in their face, in their family's mind. And right now, the boys and girls of Gen X and Gen Z and all the ethnic armed groups are basically saying, enough. We are going to take up weapons. It's a declaration of battle in war with you, Ming Online. And those weapons are going to be poured into Burma. The world isn't just simply going to let Burma die. There was an arms embargo on Bosnia and Sarajevo, a tragic decision. That's not going to happen in Burma. All those ethnic groups already highly armed. The underground within Myanmar will find arms, sir. They're going to oppose you on every street corner, and they're going to do exactly what happened in the ghettos during the German occupation of Poland and the various other countries. And study history. Just look at what the women of resistance did in the ghettos. The styles of resistance. Do we want to see Burma? Yes, it's coming. Am I an advocate of it? I can't say that I am not an advocate of it, but it's turning to that irrelevant to my opinion. We're going to see selected responses to the terrorist group MAH-SAC. What are we going to see? Railroads blown up, factories burned, bridges mined and cars detonated, hand grenades thrown into military trucks. This is what armed resistance looks like when people are pressed beyond the edge. Welcome to war, Ming Online. Welcome to what you've done to your own country. For 11 years, I'm not trying to preach to you the obvious, but for 11 years post-release of Daw Aung San Suu Kyi, by your father, Tan Shui, you have not been able to rehabilitate. You have not been able to listen to the power of dialogue and compromise. You have not respected the people's wish for democracy. You have not been able to negotiate and talk with the ethnic groups on how to coexist with harmony and peace. You have not realized the beauty of your people, your country. It seems that you're primarily concerned with privilege and power, which is not an uncommon motivation for those who fetishize, money and your $100 million a month that comes with the Myanmar oil and gas enterprise, plus those armaments that come in from the genocidal premier of China and Putin and Turkey and Ukraine. You are nothing without your guns, without your money, and without your obedient foot soldiers. You're nothing. Just like Saddam Hussein died in a gutter. That is your future. That's the future of your family. You have demanded that the people greet you with an appropriate response, which is to move from the civil disobedience movement to revolution and armed resistance. I can't even imagine the streets of Mandalay and Mon Hua and Sagaing and Rangoon and all the townships all throughout this beloved country, where boys from the age of 14 and girls from the age of 14 to 23 and 25, look at the armed resistance during the Holocaust. They were young teenagers and young adults that risked everything. They even brought Nazi soldiers in through the allure of sexuality and intimacy and took a gun and put it in their mouth and blew their brains out rather than simply starve to death under the fear and the persecution of a terrorist group called the Third Reich. That's what people do when they have no hope, no dream, no future. Burma does not go back to the Stone Ages of simply coexisting like animals, cats, dogs, and livestock under the prophet terrorist group of MAH-SAC, and slave in factories and go home and cry and moan and be impoverished based upon your need. It is tragic. It is sad. But the people of Myanmar have no other recourse than to take up arms. And they will be armed. When I was in Menopause in 89, in 1990, in 91, in the Karen state, I met many so-called mercenaries. The name isn't appropriate. These are foreign fighters, armed foreign fighters. I met Australians. I met Europeans. I met Americans. They went there. They gravitated there because, Alan, there's no clearer place that we've seen on the planet of right and wrong. A genocidal army, ethnically cleansing the Karens. And we've seen it in the Rakhine state with the Rohingyas. We've seen it with their own fellow Buddhists inside the country. The Kachin, the Hmong, the Shan, the Karen, the Rakhine. So many of the ethnic area people know firsthand boys and girls have only been brought up under the brutality of a terrorist group who attacks them night and day. No place in the outer regions of Myanmar is safe, and it hasn't been safe. And now the entire country is a war zone based upon a few men obsessed with oil and gas and money and power and sex and orgasms and stupidity. And you've begged the world to take you out, and they're going to take you out because the world is not going to tolerate a terrorist Saddam Hussein in South Asia. Okay, you could argue America and Biden doesn't want to upset Premier Xi Jinping. He doesn't want to break the oil and the gas coming in from the Andaman Sea that goes into the Yunnan province. He doesn't want to upset the balance of all those people in Myanmar who work like livestock, slave labor to build plastics and goods and garments and cars to be shipped cheaply back around the world through China. He doesn't want to upset his dictatorial buddy in Beijing. That's why Joe Biden is often called Beijing Joe. Sold out Joe. Sold out to the CCP. Money, profit. It's a tragedy. But that's the reality. And it leaves the people of Myanmar and the ethnicities to unite. Those mercenaries that I met during those months in and around Menopause in the jungles, I would never believe that it would come to taking up arms. I remember interviewing Burmese soldiers that were captured. Why are you killing your own people? If we don't kill, we're killed. We can't eat without killing. We're told to kill. We're told to be obedient by our commanders to kill. We don't question it. We're beaten if we don't kill. We must obey. We must obey. We must obey. Dictatorship, tyranny, the obsession with the apartheid of an idea. Whatever reason, from Ne Win to Tan Shui to Kin Yun to Somong to this madman Ming Online, the tyranny of the stupidity of Moha, of tyranny, of terrorism. And now the people of Myanmar and the world must embrace armed revolution, armed resistance. We think of the word suicide bombers. We immediately think of Palestine. But if I'm not mistaken, suicide bombing came from the Tamil women in Sri Lanka. No other recourse than to upset the tyranny, the persecution, than for women, teenage women, young adult women, to tie explosives to their body, to walk through areas where there were Tamil soldiers, Myanmar army soldiers, by Buddhist teenage girls wearing dynamite. Will there be suicide bombers all throughout Burma to maintain a vigilant armed resistance to the terrorist group MAH-SAC? Is that where Burma is headed? It did in Sri Lanka. Look at Japan in World War II, the whole notion of kamikaze. Men and women lined up in droves to be able to learn, to do what they needed to do, to sacrifice their lives for the emperor. Such was the ideology of fascism. Burma is on the brink of confronting terrorism with radical modern armed resistance. We're no longer talking about just sanctions. MAH-SAC, Ming Online, has gone crazy. His evil has gone beyond. He is now a full-blown Peta, a full-blown Saddam Hussein, a Boko Haram rapist to his own people, and he sits behind the prestige of a palace in Naypyidaw, and he wines and dines, and every morsel of food he puts in his body, every food that goes into his daughter, his son, his wife and friend, every drink of liquor or beer or water or tea could and very likely will be poisoned, because guerrilla war has no limits. They want to take out the terrorist, just like America took out Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi and Pinochet and Hitler and Milosevic in Bosnia. You will end Ming Online dead, imprisoned, or both. And that's what you're doing because your mind is out of control. No one enjoys talking this way, but there is no recourse that you've left your people. We're begging the world community to stop funding you, stop giving you bullets and arms, stop giving you oil money, gas money. But there's so much collusion, so much complicity with the economic, homicidal killing machine called capitalism, called globalism, called totalitarianism incorporated. Everyone's got blood on their hands, including me. I pay taxes to murder in America. It's tragic. But Ming Online, who would ever imagine, after 11 years, Aung San Suu Kyi and the leaders of your country tried to bring peace and harmony and the power of discussion to the parliament and to you. And your response after 11 years is to kill, torture, assassinate, persecute, rape, put poison in the mind, in the body, in the mouths of people. The message that you're sending to the population and to the world is the darkest form of evil that I've seen in my lifetime. You are a Hitler. You are creating a Third Reich. You must be stopped. You're going to galvanize thousands of men and women from around the world who are going to don civilian clothing and do everything they possibly can to support the people of Myanmar in learning guerrilla tactics, modern day tactics, to overthrow your terrorist group in every location. No place will be safe. That's present time Myanmar. because you refuse to snap out of the coma of your delusion and release Aung San Suu Kyi? Your wife should just sit you down, take your clothes off, and just slap your face silly to snap you out of the trance of your narcissistic, toxic stupidity. One woman could knock the fucking sense out of you, man, but no one's got the fucking balls to talk to you eye to eye, conscience to conscience. The MAH-SAC of Myanmar has turned on you, but they need to stand up and use the stealth of their voice. Put 3 fingers on every alms bowl in the country today. Put it on with decals. They'll come off after there's victory. Every city in the country refuses to feed or sell any of your terrorist boys and girls. No one, not a tailor, will fix anything on a uniform. No gas, no petroleum, no tea leaves, no sanctity of a monastery, no more tila shins, no more koyins. You are permanently blacklisted from the people of your own country. The civil disobedience movement is only just beginning. No more money. You can arrest all the doctors. What are you going to train new doctors and nurses? Soldiers? All they know how to do is kill. They don't know how to deliver babies. They don't know how to extract teeth. Wait till all the dentists and you have a root canal. You'll free Aung San Suu Kyi to get your fucking tooth out, you idiot. And wait till the world snaps out of the coma of their apathy and sees that Burma is potentially the Sarajevo where World War II began. Burma could be the seat of World War III, Ming Online, because China wants Myanmar as a province. They've got 16 or 17 provinces already within mainland China that exceed the population of Burma today. The Belt and Road Initiative is a euphemism for Burma is our next province. The oil and gas pipeline that you get the money for, and you sell your people out as slave laborers to build things to go into China, you've been co-opted. You don't get it. Xi Jinping knows that in any second you're so expendable, and they know America's not going to intervene, or the EU or Australia, because they're not going to rock the boat with China's CCP and me, Xi Jinping, the dominator, the Stalin of the globe. I am the God, I am the Jesus, I am the real Buddha. I am the king of the cosmos. That's Xi Jinping. He's more prestigious than even a Buddha image. The desecration of Tibetan Buddhism in Tibet from that country is just sick, and you're right on the chopping block. But the people in Myanmar will not go lightly. These boys and girls have such heroism and courage, and they're going to be trained, and people are going to give them all forms of military support. America may not send in boots and ships and planes, but you can be sure that very sophisticated rifles that you kill them with today, within months, they'll have those same rifles. They'll be highly trained. And you will find your own soldiers and policemen and women being shot at from high skyscrapers and from apartments and from behind trees. And it will be going from street to street, and you will not know who they are because they'll blend right back into society. And all you'll want to do is to create martial law and put razor wire around areas of each of these cities until your terror is so bleak that you've imprisoned your own house around razor wire. And you've got sentries there with automatic rifles. You've done what Joseph Biden has done to his own home in Washington, D.C., brought in 10,000 soldiers and put razor wire around it because of the paranoia and the propaganda and the fear. And yet opens the borders, closes the schools. Helter-skelter decision-making based on stupidity. My mercenary friends in the jungles, in Shan and Karen, they were so trained. One dear friend, he's now dead, Trey Mead, 2 tours in Vietnam, in Khe Sanh in the north, the most intense battling with the Vietnamese. Highly trained, highly moral, highly sophisticated. We often talk, would you shoot? Would you kill if it were your family? I remember one friend of mine who I met in the jungle. We were monks together, and he left in '88, joined the ABSDF, took up arms. And he could feel that I was judging them one day on a walk through the jungle. Little small groups of men and women. And he turned around and said, "Alan, I'm sick of you judging me." This is paraphrasing. And I said, "Yes, I'm judging you. I'm so with Aung San Suu Kyi and others in the belief in nonviolence as the way to overcome this dictatorship." And he said, "Alan, they killed my fucking mother. They put a bullet through her head." Someone else yelled out. "And they shot my father through the heart." And he took the AK-47 and he shoved it into my chest. He said, "What would you do, Alan, if you didn't have an American passport? They're raping your daughter. They're killing your parents. They're terrorizing your family. Would you simply send metta and just say it's their karma, they'll be repaid in the next life?" When would you act? When they cut off your finger? When they cut off your wrist? When they took your money? When they took your eyes out? When they cut your tongue out? When would you shoot? When would you take up armed resistance? I remember that was a very, very epic, pivotal moment in my own life to understand the relativity and the importance of dealing with a crisis appropriate to the crisis. And I shifted then from the idealism of nonviolence to the relativity of it, being a human being in this lokia, in this plane, on this planet, in this time, in this level of evolution. We are animals, we are fighters, we are saints, we are prostitutes, we are sex workers, we are killers. We're everything. We all have these genes, and we must learn to inhabit appropriateness, skillfulness in context. Those people shot by the arrow, we must stop the people shooting those arrows and equally help support the people who've been shot by those arrows, not only put the burden on the person shot. And Burma today is the modernization, to me, of Dhamma, a multi-faith Dhamma, not a Buddhist Dhamma. Consciousness in dynamic action, respectful of the context, appropriate to the terror that they have to deal with, embodying more intelligent expressions of their own innate Ashoka. Appropriate response. Buddhism was spread around the world based upon the intelligence of Ashoka consciousness. You deal with evil appropriate to the evil, not hide behind the ideal or the dogma that often masquerades as apathy and fear. Welcome to modern day Burma. They're giving us a modern expression of metta in action, and it may very well have a hand grenade attached to it and an automatic rifle. It may have all forms of innovative guerrilla tactics. Who could imagine all the ways in which the women and the men, the teenagers, in all 90 ghettos under the maniacism of Hitler in the Third Reich. The creative expressions of resilience and armed resistance to fight the inevitable, even down to the wire, in the Warsaw Ghetto, the final assault of armed resistance, where the Nazi terrorists went block by block and exploded every building into rubble and killed every human being except those who came out onto the street and shot them dead, and the final 42,000 that survived that onslaught were taken on trains and exterminated. Ming Online, you have created a Warsaw Ghetto in Burma. The world is bearing witness to that. It will end. The people of Myanmar, as I hear it, your leaders of the civil disobedience movement, of the committee representing the People's Parliament, the gentleman at the United Nations, Dr. Sasa, others around the world, others in hiding. It's a declaration of Dhamma war that includes armed resistance, Dhamma-oriented war. I don't use the word Dharma to speak about Buddhism, but the lawfulness, the intelligence, the necessity of bringing an informed level of metta, karuna, and upekkha to the forefront of the guerrilla movement to undermine the legitimacy of your role and the ability of your terrorist group to act in your country. And you will be sure, study history, your days are over. The criminal court has a bounty on your head and everyone around you. And everywhere you go from this day on, every morsel of food, everything you put into your body, every night that you go to sleep, you're never going to be safe again. And there's so many sophisticated drones that fly long distances, that have precision-guided killing tactics, either with missiles or cyanide or poisons that are specific to your well. You're fighting with modern armaments. The world over is not going to essentially intervene in a way that's deliberately putting boots on the ground yet. But you've excited the interest of all of us worldwide to modernize our Dhamma, to modernize our loving kindness, that it includes radical self-defense as we extract all forms of support, financially, emotionally, materially, through petroleum and oil, rubies, gas, lumber, labor. Everyone in the world whose conscience, with the digital age and with the internet, we have been activated worldwide, and it's increasing like a tsunami. The world is going to rise up every day, Ming Online, and support the freedom of the people. Now, all ethnicities, you have been isolated by your own choice. We're going to withdraw all support financially. We're going to dry you up. And the people of your country are going to be trained in how to interrupt the apparatus of your terror. Tragic to say that, but they're not going to use slingshots this time. They're not going to just throw Molotov cocktails. Just like General Aung San did, coming back from Japan with a group of 30. 135 years of white supremacist genocidal occupation, and a young man named Aung San and his friends interrupted the terrorism of the white supremacists. They threw grenades into trucks. They blew up police stations. They shot and killed soldiers. So many ways in which you now have to deal with what you've done. The war is on. They've openly declared it. All the ethnicities are coming after you. All the people of the country will now seek support and be trained. And you have galvanized the entire world to take you out. And you must go. You have not listened to any kind of respect, of dialogue, of delegations, of mediation. You have declared yourself a Saddam Hussein who must be taken out. I would like to see you be tried in the criminal court, and all the people, just like in World War II, tried as war criminals, as crimes against humanity, so that the world can see what you have to say on why you did it. So we can study the psychology of your own thinking to prevent this madness from ever happening again. But the war is on. The people have declared revolution on MAH-SAC, Ming Online's State Administration Council. The war is on. The revolution has begun.